Hello everybody, and if you're just tuning in for the first time, I'm Maddie Osman from the Blogsmith, which is the-blogsmith.com, and doing these weekly UX audits, which stands for user experience audits for websites, because user experience can help to boost SEO, but ultimately at the end of the day, whatever brings somebody to your website really isn't as important as how a human ends up interacting with your website in terms of, trying to create conversions or building a relationship or even just answering questions for people. And one thing I wanted to bring up this week is that sometimes usability goes beyond just what you see on a brand's website. In fact, I guess it always goes beyond that. Especially if you have an in-person component or you have a physical product or things like that. So one book I would recommend to you just to understand usability from more than just the digital perspective is The Design of Everyday Things, which talks a lot about products and how to design things to kind of be innately understood as opposed to different things that you might be doing that are actually, hurting usability and go against the kind of like the common understanding a person understands as to how you should be using something. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in terms of what I'm going to be auditing today. And I've been getting a lot of interest recently, especially from bloggers, to have their websites audited. But I'm actually going to take a break from my regular schedule of other people's content to kind of do a little guerrilla audit here from a place that I visited this past weekend. So it's called Mesa Verde, and it's a national park. It's in Colorado, and it's really cool. They have these crazy cliff dwellings where people used to live. They had a Native American population, and now it's a national park, and it's actually bordered by a reservation, so some of the same people who were there back then are still close by, but obviously now it's a national park, so it's a little bit different. But one thing that I noticed while I was there and trying to plan my visit there is that their website is ridiculously unusable. And it's probably worth mentioning at this point too that I was on this trip with my boyfriend at the time. We were just trying to check out Colorado's western slope, but what actually ended up happening as a result, some news of sorts, is that he popped the question and proposed, and so now he is not my boyfriend anymore, he's my fiance, and so this was part of what became an engagement trip, and it was really exciting, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. But anyway, we'll get back to our content here. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a moment here to get that going. So here is Mesa Verde's website. And it's my understanding that they also have an app. At least I think I saw that when I was initially going through the website. And I'm going to be talking about, this is a government website. So, whatever opinions you have about the government, there's bureaucratic loopholes that you have to jump through just to get stuff up live on the web. And so I'd encourage you to take whatever I'm saying with that grain of salt added to it, that, these government websites don't necessarily have the same sort of creative freedoms that you might get on like my website, for example. And so we have to keep that in mind. We have to be fair thinking in terms of that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, the whole purpose of having a website for this national park is to help people plan their visit, or just to learn more about the heritage behind this site, to learn what the cliff dwellings were for, and so the website really needs to operate with these things in mind. So when I was looking at this website initially, it was on my phone because we were driving. It was very much a road trip style trip, and so I was working out of pocket most of the time. And it was quite a frustrating user experience because I was trying to figure out, how much of this park can we see on our own, and then how much of it, in terms of like these cliff dwellings that you can see here, do we need to have a ranger with us to guide us there? And so you'll notice, this website has a very simple design. there's nothing really inherently wrong with it. In fact, I actually like the design. It's not the design that's in question, though. It's the experience that the design provides. So I think that's another important takeaway to keep in mind when it comes to something like this, is that, it's not, you could have the best design, but if the design isn't if it's not accomplishing its goals, then, ultimately it's not a good design. So anyway, the front page is just kind of sharing everything and anything. They do mention some current news, like one of the main cliff dwellings was closed while we were there, and a lot of that has to do with seasonality. It's just harder to do the hikes required to get to these places. And so I was glad that this was located on the front page of the website before I got invested in looking, into visiting that cliff dwelling within this park. And so that's good. Some of the other things are maybe less relevant, like video, podcasts, and mobile app. It's like, well, why do I care about that stuff before I even know what this is? And granted, they have this like orientation video here, but you look at it and you think, wow, 6 minutes? I mean, that's a lot for kind of my first introduction. I would say that if you're going to use an intro video on your front page, I mean, it should be a matter of maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes if it's a complicated topic. But you have to keep in mind that people, if this is their first impression, they're not really ready to invest in 6 minutes about, learning about this specific thing just yet. This might be something that, later on, as they click through to more pages and qualify themselves as somebody who really is interested in either visiting or learning more about this park, then something that's 6.5 minutes long might be, better. It might be better qualified for those people. But at this point, I'm not interested in watching 6 minutes of video on my first visit to this website. One thing that I would have liked to see on this front page is a little bit more about what cliff dwellings are open, And also, one thing that we learned while just going through the process of trying to visit this park is that, so it says this on the website, that you have to purchase tickets in advance and that you can only get them in person, which I think is a usability problem in and of itself. You can only purchase tickets up to 2 days in advance for the tours. You can visit the park at any time. But for the tours to actually get up and close and personal with these cliff dwellings, you only have 2 days in advance and you only have very specific places. The other issue with this park is that, so you can get the tickets like as you come in at the visitor center, assuming it's opened. My fiance now and I, we went into the park and it was before the visitor center was open. It was before there were even people staffing the entrance, and so we couldn't do it then. You can also get them at the museum that's on the property or on premises. But then we went to the museum and there was somebody there at 9 o'clock, which is when it said it would open. But then they're like, oh, well, we don't, or actually it was at 8 o'clock. They said, we don't sell tickets until 9:30. And we were kind of on a time crunch because we brought Lola over here and we had to check out of our hotel by 11. So we got up, 6:30, and this place was very close to where we were staying. And we were trying to knock out a couple things. The other thing is there's one cliff dwelling you could actually go see, and you could do a self-guided tour. You don't need tickets. You don't need a ranger. There's somebody who's posted there. But apparently, also, that one wasn't open until 9, but it didn't say it on the website. And so the problem with this website is that, they're trying to convey a lot of information, but they just don't really completely convey it. They don't tell you, the times that you could get the tickets. They don't tell you the times that you can take yourself on this self-guided tour. And because you're in a national park, you don't want to violate any of these rules because that could be a felony. And so what this website really needs to do is just give all the information, but also present it in a usable way. So one thing I want to show you in line with that is I've got to find the page. So here's another thing, just finding the page where I can get the information. I've got to find the page with all the information about all the different cliff dwellings that you can see. So I want to say I want to plan your visit and then maybe things to do, or it was probably places to go actually. And so they have this button, visit a cliff dwelling. I think that's what it was. So now you see this table, and it says, okay, you know, you can go on guided tours to these 3 places between these dates, but then you actually have to click in to be able to see what the tour schedule is. And even once you click it, it's still one more click until I can get to that tour schedule. So as you can imagine, doing this on a mobile device was a very frustrating experience that resulted in me having to take a lot of screenshots just so that I wouldn't have to go back and do this stuff all over again. So if we click here to see the tour schedule, I mean, even now it doesn't show you right away. Okay, so I think what I ended up doing was going to the purchasing tour tickets, and maybe that's where I found out when the tour times even were. Okay, so that's not the case. So as you can see here, it tells you when the areas are open where you can buy the tickets, but not actually the correct times for when you can buy the tickets, because as you can see here, it says 9, but then in person, they told us, oh, we're not selling tickets until 9:30. And by the way, they're already all sold out. So that was fun. Let's see if we go to guided tours again, or maybe purchasing tour tickets. As you can tell, it's like I already went through all this stuff, and I still have no idea like where to find. I mean, this page is broken. It's a mess. So, where was it? I can't even find the page that said when the schedule was. Maybe this is it. Yeah, okay, maybe this is it. Yeah, so we have to go like all the way down here to actually get the times for the tours. So now we have to compare the information behind when the buildings are open at the park, where you could get tickets, and there was also another place you could get tickets. It might even be here, maybe not. It was in like Durango, and this is in Mesa Verde. I can't remember the name of the town. I think it was Cortez that we stayed in. I can't remember now. But the other place that you could get tickets besides the places within the park, the 2 places within the park that you could get tickets, was in like Durango, which was, you know, out of the way. It might have been on our way to get there. If I'm recalling correctly, it might be like a popular tourist pathway that you would take if you're on a road trip, but it wasn't like it was like right there. It was at least an hour away, I want to say. So now we finally have the schedule of when the tours even happen. And as you can see, so like we're in this date range right here, at least when we went, and it says, you know, every hour, 10 a.m. to 5, and then also 9:30 and 3:30. So now you have to compare that to when those things are open, and like, you know, are you even going to be in town, you know, 2 days ahead of time to try to get these tickets? When we went, the tickets were sold out until 2 p.m., and this is considered off season for tourists. So, I mean, it seems to me like the only way you're actually going to get tickets for a time you want is either A, if you're in town, you know, 2 days plus ahead of the tour you want to do, or B, you know somebody there who can get it for you. So major usability issues for somebody trying to plan a trip, you know, to something that's very cool, but if you can't buy them ahead, you know, online, if you have to physically be in person there, that's a major issue to me when you're trying to balance all the other things that you're trying to do during your trip. So, and you can also see here, you know, it tells you for which tours a ticket is required. Here's the other usability issue that I want to mention about this place, an in-person usability issue. So Mesa Verde has 2 mesas, and it's like they go out, but there's no way to cut between them. So once you're like out in the branch, you can't just drive over to the other one, you know. And so the place where we wanted to go on the self-guided tour was on this mesa, but it was going to take probably a 45-minute drive to get back to the main area where we could buy tickets for the tour and then get to the actual tour. And so to me, you know, if they're not selling tickets at the actual tour destinations, which they didn't, and we found out, you know, both by this website and also from one of the rangers telling somebody, you know, you're SOL, sorry, you know, you can't buy tickets here, and, you know, even if they were available, you got to go back back up this mesa and all the roads are, kind of barf inducing just because they're just going around like any Colorado road. It's just like around the mountains, it's crazy. And so it's like, even if you had the time to go back, for sure you would barf by the time you came back to the tour. And so just so many different issues just in terms of like, where do I buy the tickets? What times are available? Also what time of year is it in terms of availability, and so many variations with that. It needs to be almost like a self-selecting process or like a multi-step process where you say, this is the date I'm going to be in town. Some notices about where to get tickets and how far ahead of time you can get tickets and how much they cost and when tours happen. Are there specific balcony houses that you want to go to, or cliff dwellings that you want to go to, and selecting those. I'm just thinking that this can't possibly be the best way to present this information, because I can't compare it all together. I can't layer it on top of everything, and I have to skip ahead to different pages, and then I have to try to recall, where I went to get information. I can screenshot it, I guess, but even so, I can't really compare these things one-to-one on a mobile device. So, I'm hoping that their app just provides a much better experience, but I almost can't imagine that, because if it's like a progressive web application that's just based on this website, then it's really going to be the same exact experience, and it's just so frustrating to do on your phone. The other thing is there's no signal in Mesa Verde, so you can't really be checking back on these things. You really have to take screenshots in order for it to be usable to you. So, I think I've kind of dragged this one out. I've told you about my issues with this website and with the park's usability in general. There's so much that could be improved to create a better user experience. They just have to do a better job of, putting the information on the pages where it's relevant, or having, tool tips, or guiding people, like, here's where you need to go to figure out when you can buy the tickets. But I just wanted to kind of end this one by saying sometimes it's not just a website issue. Sometimes it's also your in-person experience. And so when you're running a company that does have an in-person component, you want to make sure that the user experience is good on both sides, because if it falls apart in one place, then it's going to fall apart on the other. And if your website doesn't provide the complete information you need to be planning a trip to, something that you probably only have one chance to see, just depending on where you live and what your goals are and everything else that you want to see in the world, you really need to have the complete information required to do these things. And I think that Mesa Verde would benefit so much from doing some sort of online ticketing system where you can see how many tickets are left for different times, get alerts if they're about to, if they're about to run out of tickets, just being able to facilitate that transaction that's not in person would be so useful. And so I'm going to, hopefully put this in front of them so they can see some of the issues that I had with it, and hopefully make these things better for people in the future, so that people can have, a relaxing day at Mesa Verde and enjoy it for everything that it is.